So good morning to everyone, good afternoon, good evening. We've got quite a few time zones and regions of the world represented today. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Ken Schmidt. I'm the CEO and founder of TurningPoint Executive Search. My team and I are based here in the US in Southern California on the West Coast. We've been in business for over 15 years and I've been recruiting for 25 years. But our firm here in the US covers a pretty wide variety of industries across a lot of different sectors as well as functions. And we actually do searches across the entire US platform as well. So it's a fun place to be. I'm coming to you this morning actually as part of Talentor, which is a global organization. Our CEO, Michael Sarsteiner, is here this morning, and he's going to be introducing Talentor as a group. So we'll all get a good sense for what they do. And as you probably saw on the invite, we have a fantastic panel of global HR leaders joining us today to talk about what's happening in their regions of the world. We'll chat about quite a bit of different things, different topics and different subjects that I think will be universally applicable and interesting to everybody here. So thank you all for joining us. All right, so Michael, do you want to start and kick us off with a little bit of a discussion about what Talentor is, what we're all about?
Yes, thank you, Ken. Welcome to everybody. First of all, let me say thank you to you, Ken, and to everybody who is and was involved in the organization of this webinar. It's amazing to see how many people are joining. So thank you very much for all your efforts. Thank you to all the panelists from all around the world, Myanmar, US, Czech Republic, Estonia, Germany, Austria. So yeah, great to see that our network works. Talentor was founded in 2003, and since 10 years, it's Austrian-based and has an Austrian ownership. I'm taking care together with Sabine Steiners, is also in our call here. And we try to develop the network further. At the moment, it's 33 countries around the globe. As we will see in our today's panel, I'm sure, again, is that for us, it's very important to have local partners with local knowledge and local expertise, no matter if it's a global world, yes, and global recruitments, yes, but we need you, Ken, in the US and our partners all around the globe with their local experience in our search projects. We tend to be, as a network, very, very pragmatic and grounded, and I hope this will be visible today as well in the discussions, and we try to have very pragmatic solutions all day long. For all the participants, I wish that you can take out at least one idea from today's panel you can use and implement in your organization or in your private life as well, for sure. And I hope that everybody can take out something, which I'm pretty sure that it will happen. Thanks again for everybody for joining us, and have a great morning, afternoon, evening session. And I'm handing over back to you, Ken. And yeah, wish you all the best.
Great, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I've been part of the Talentor organization now for just over 3 years. It's been a fantastic group and just an amazing, kind of collection of wisdom and knowledge and information from everybody. And as I always joke, I am greatly appreciative of the fact that everybody speaks English, because my German and my other languages are not quite as sharp. So thank you for that as well. It's certainly helpful for us in the US, definitely. But we have about 25 different countries that are represented today in terms of attendees, which is fantastic. As you'll hear, there's a lot of things that are very similar across hiring and talent acquisition and retention issues out there. And then there's a little bit of information, or a little bit of kind of uniqueness, if you will, to each different part of the world. So it'll be really, really interesting to explore that today and answer your questions about that as well. And to that point, as far as questions go, you are able to ask us questions in the chat. We ask that you, throw your question up there in the chat, and myself and our head of operations and marketing, Elaine, she and I will be moderating the questions as well. But we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to ask any questions that you might about what's happening in your region or particular issues that you're coming up against. And we will do our absolute best to address them as we move through the panel this morning as well. All right, great. So I'm going to go ahead and just start by allowing each of our panelists, and we have 5 people here today, all of whom have a very, very unique and a very impressive background. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves, who they are and where they work, and then also have them talk a little bit just quickly about, what the scope of their role is and how big their organization is as well. and then we'll jump into the actual questions. So Estelle, who's over in Estonia, why don't you start, and we can work our way from there. Welcome.
Thank you, Ken, and it's a pleasure to join this panel. And probably I'm from Estonia, meaning also the coldest country today participating. We are promised to have -20 by Celsius in a few days, so very Christmas, lots of snow here. And I'm representing today Aurora, and this is Estonian startup. So Estonia is very well known as a startup hub. I would say actually startup heaven. It's really easy to establish a business here and grow globally. And this is something that I have been doing in Aurora as well. I'm director of people and culture. And believe it or not, just 2 years ago, we had only 5 people. Today, we have close to 250 together with our partners. And we have grown from Estonia to China, Dubai, UK, US, and all across Europe. So we have grown very, very rapidly to very many directions and keep going. So this is my background for today's panel.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And I'm glad that you're inside. I hope that you're warm out there. It sounds pretty chilly for sure. Yeah, and we look forward to hearing more about the kind of the startup nature of Aurora, and how you've been building your teams out there, and what it's like to attract talent in that region of the world as well. So we'll definitely get into that. All right, Joachim, do you want to start with your conversation?
Yes, thank you very much, Ken. So it's a pleasure to be here. And my name is Joachim Müller. I'm the head of HR in the Hübner Group. Hübner Group is a family-owned company in Germany, located in Kassel. Kassel is around in the center of Germany. And we are 75 years old as a company, and we have 3,500 employees on a global basis in 30 locations. And our main products are for bus and for train gangway systems, for example. And also we are producing materials for the industry like rubber. And we have a special business segment with laser technology. So this is our business model. And what we see in the last years is it's not easy to be successful. And I have a wide range of HR experience during my career. And also I have spent 3 years in China to learn more about HR, people, and business. And this I would like also to bring in today's discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's one of the wonderful things about the panelists today is that everybody has a different background. We always say that few people actually go to university or college to get into HR or to get into recruiting. You tend to do something else first, and then eventually move into that as your career progresses. So I think our panel is a good representation of that career path as well. All right, Jennifer, my counterpart here in the United States, do you want to chat about your role and your previous roles also?
Yes, no problem. Thank you so much, Ken and Talentor. Really appreciate you including me in today's discussion. I feel humbled by the talent that's around me, and I'm sure with all the participants that are joining today. So my name is Jennifer Picus. A short time ago, in my former role, I was the head of HR, general affairs, which includes facilities and lots of other things that don't have a home somewhere else, and diversity and inclusion for Kia America, which is the sales and marketing affiliate for Kia in the United States. I say a short time ago because a few months ago I made the decision, which was tough, as we all know, to leave Kia and start my own work, my own business in consulting and contracting, doing what I love in HR, but also taking some time to spend with my family. I had a daughter going off to college, and as we all have heard, this is one of the things that I'm sure will come up in discussion today, is about some choices that we're having to make, some difficult choices. So I'm very excited to bring my knowledge to this panel today. And as Ken noted, I'm coming from Southern California. It's hard to complain at all about the weather here because it, of course, is very beautiful. For us, it's cold. And also with the background, as Ken noted, I didn't go to school to be in HR. I actually was a CPA. I was an accountant before I, what I say, saw the light in HR and decided to move over about 22 years ago or so. So I'm very happy to be representing here. Thank you, Ken.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Yes. And kudos to you. Congratulations for taking the leap and going out to start your own business. I know several folks here have done that in small and larger capacities as well. So you're in very good company, that's for sure.
Thank you.
All right, great. Arpita, do you want to tell us about yourself? I know you're in Myanmar and we'd love to hear about your role.
Yeah, thank you so much for including me in this discussion today. So I'm Arpita, I'm an Indian, and very much like Jennifer, I have not gone to a HR school to become an HR. I've started my career in sales and have done sales in different backgrounds, like in pharma and banking and insurance and all. And then almost 17 years back, I have moved into recruitment. So it was into search and talent acquisition. And eventually I had my own business for almost 7 years into talent acquisition. And then I moved the country, from India, I moved to Myanmar and I joined DKSH Myanmar. So DKSH is a Swiss conglomerate and we are taking care of logistics, supply chain, FMCG, performance material, technology. So many business units over there. And we have around more than 30,000 people working with us over more than 30 countries. And in DKSH Myanmar, we are having around 3,000 people here in the country. And the base goes back to more than 25 years in Myanmar itself and 150 years old organization as a whole. So Myanmar is going through a very difficult situation. I'm glad that I can sustain and working here and very happy to work in this kind of environment. And it's a huge learning for me as well. And it's a great opportunity once again to be a part of this panel. So a lot of things to learn and discuss and exchange ideas.
Yes, welcome, Arpita. Thank you for being here. I know it's late evening for you there in Myanmar, so thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise as well. Okay, so last and certainly not least, Tom, do you want to tell us about your role at Asahi? I think you're on mute still, Tom.
Yeah, I think I was muted.
Thank you.
All right, yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Serb. I work for Asahi, which is a global food and beverage company. My role is head of HR for the regional headquarters based in Prague, Czech Republic. So I'm accountable basically for headquarters in Europe mostly. Asahi actually has got operations from Australia to UK, so nothing in in Americas, but we actually are represented in more than 100 markets globally. Yeah, so basically we do have export markets as well. I, apart from heading the HR team for the headquarters here in Europe, I'm also involved in global transformation projects. So I've been spending more and more time in Japan, which is a very different market compared to Europe. So if anybody has good experience, I'm happy to share or potentially learn something from that area. And in terms of background, I do a background in psychology. When I studied, actually, it was easy. There was no university offering to study HR, so and I was really interested in this subject. So in my roughly 20 years of experience, I did consulting, small business, academia, research, and now the last 11 years, I'm in the corporate world, mostly HR. So again, very happy to be here and discuss all the topics.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you being here. And it's great to have a different perspective as well from the food and beverage industry compared to technology or services or all the other folks that we have on the panel today. So thank you for being that voice. All right, great. So another reminder that if you have questions, please go ahead and put them into to the chat or Q&A. I already have one question coming up about succession planning, which we will definitely touch on in a few minutes here. We want to also be able to not only share with you information from us as the panelists, but also allow you to see information and share that among each other. So we have a few different poll questions that we're going to be asking you along the way on a few different topics. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll. This one is really more of a general question that you'll see here about what you see as your biggest challenge coming up in 2023? There's a lot of things that are facing us right now, but this is a question about that. So please go ahead and give us your response to the question, what is your biggest talent management challenge heading into 2023? Looks like so far the two highest right now are compensation and recruiting in general. We'll see how it filters out at the end here. And when I was putting this poll question together, I initially had about, gosh, I don't know, at probably 15 different options in terms of what the challenges are for next year's, but I had to try to narrow it down to just a few. So I'm sure there are other challenges that some of you may have that doesn't fall into these 4 categories, but these are probably the most universal, I think. It's interesting also to see that depending upon what region of the country you happen to be in, and also the makeup of your workforce, if you're looking to hire a lot of IT professionals and software developers and engineers, I would imagine recruiting is very, very difficult in those parts of the world. For other organizations that are, have already hired a lot of people, retention is certainly an issue. Especially if you have folks that have been with the company for a long time that are maybe getting closer to retirement or that are looking at perhaps even leaving to start their own businesses. So each part of the world has a different take on that. So it looks like, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll right now. And you can see the responses here also. So it looks like about the majority of folks, about 38% said the biggest challenge is recruiting, followed by 32% said compensation levels are difficult. That is certainly an issue here in the US for sure, trying to figure out how to not only bring people on that are coming into the company brand new and their compensation expectations, but also how do you reconcile that? How do you make that fit with the people that are already at your company, maybe doing a similar job and perhaps their compensation level is a little bit less than the current marketplace? Okay, third place is retention, about 21%. So about 1 in 5 people said that retention of current employees is their biggest challenge. And then lastly, 9% said the developing a flexible work schedule for employees, which obviously is about work from home versus hybrid. And we'll get into that shortly here as well. All right, great. So thank you for sharing that information. Hopefully that's helpful. Again, that was about 150 or so different organizations shared this information. So one of the goals of today's conversation is to take back some of these best practices, give you an idea of what's happening with a lot of different companies around the world also. And hopefully these polls and the questions that we'll ask will help you with that as well. So please feel free to share that. All right, great. So let's go ahead and jump into our conversations here. And I think let's go ahead and start with you, Tom, in terms of what you're seeing out there, being in food and beverage, obviously a unique industry, how things are progressing for you in terms of recruiting. I know you're not recruiting much in the US, but what you're seeing in terms of other parts of the world, and if there are any unique difficulties or challenges around recruiting and attracting talent in your industry.
Okay, thank you, Ken. I think to be fair, there are huge differences between, for example, Europe and Japan, and that is coming from the, you can say, like socioeconomic, also historical context, where like when we are hiring in Japan, very well established company, #1 on the market, great products, beer business is like very attractive for many people. But at the same time, like on the Japanese market, you don't see a traditional lot of movement. So it's very different, compared to here, actually, where I think we do have actually companies that are usually #1, #2 on the European market. So we can build on quite a strong brand. So our experience is that, like obviously the market has been tough for a couple of years, changing, it's going up and down. But at the same time, like we can still build on the brands because people know them, and that's a good, that's a great advantage. What we struggle usually is like very specific skills, and we know that like for example for brewing, like you typically you don't find a lot of people on the market who are available. And we are one of the biggest employers. That means like we actually employ a lot of people in that industry. So it's hard to find anybody like on the market who would fit the profile. And also we do a lot of, like direct, like it's a lot about brands. So for example, brand marketing, very, like specific, unique skills. So all these things, like we tend to track on a regular basis what's the situation in the market. And those are our watch out flags, like where we try to understand what's happening. Also, like partner with universities, also like people from the very early stage of their career to understand, like different sources, like of talent, because quite a lot of people, they are attracted to the business, but like it's a very competitive market here in Europe.
Yeah,
so yeah, a couple of things like this. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Yes. And I know, and one of the things I wanted to, get the feedback from our panelists also is, how often you're now hiring people from outside of your industry. I know in the US here over the last, couple of years since the pandemic began to slow a little bit, the demand for talent was so high. There were so many positions that were open that were going unfilled that a lot of companies in the US began to look outside of their industry for the first time in a long time to find great talent. And some companies even, went so far as to hire more junior people that they would groom or develop and mentor into senior level positions. So it should change the strategy here in the U.S. for sure. Jennifer, do you want to maybe comment on that in terms of what you saw at Kia and even now as you begin your consulting also, are you seeing that opening up of hiring from outside the industry?
Certainly, Ken. Thank you for the comments also, Tom. A lot of similarities, actually, even though it's amongst different countries. But yeah, I mean, I think, for Kia, but also what I've seen even while at Kia with other organizations in the US or globally, but also since I left Kia a few months ago, I think there's a good mixture. It depends on, obviously, in spaces like HR or finance or IT or some of these types of areas, it's a lot easier to hire people out of industry. When you work for a company like Kia, which is obviously very specific, there are going to be certain areas where it's going to behoove the organization to try and find somebody in industry. But when you think about what happened during the pandemic and sort of still what's happening, and I'm an example of this, right? You had a lot of opportunities open up that maybe weren't there even at the very beginning of 2020. And this is going to go towards the succession planning discussion as well. But there was a lot more opportunity, not only for people internally to have that, growth opportunity, but people externally to come in as well. And like you said, even some people coming in who may not be as experienced as you would have expected. Also coming from other states and other countries, I think opening this up, particularly during the pandemic, why most positions were remote, you had that opportunity as well. So, I think even though our unemployment has gone down relative to what it was during the pandemic, I still think there's a ton of opportunity out there. You hear things like the Great Resignation, or what I heard even in the last few months since I left Kia, the quiet quitting. Is that the term? Quiet quitting. So there's certainly some opportunities that have made themselves available since then, since the pandemic started.
Yeah, it definitely has changed quite a bit. No, I agree. And I think that's one of the things that, I don't know if you call it a silver lining or not with the pandemic, but in terms of allowing people to come in and be hired for different kind of positions, or to be seen as being mentored longer term, as folks that are more experienced, that are more senior are starting to retire also, we need to bring in that new level of talent, that new group of employees to help them move up through the organization as well. Estelle, I'm curious on your side, given that you're in a startup that's grown dramatically in a very short amount of time, from, I think you said 5 employees just less than 2 years ago to now over 200 plus. How have you hired? And I'm curious about not only the hard technical skills that you're looking for, but also how do you assess whether or not somebody is the right fit to join a startup in terms of their softer skills? Can they handle communicating and moving very quickly and making fast decisions as part of a startup? I'm curious about how you assess that when you're hiring people.
Well, it's the $1 million question, actually, you're asking Ken here. As the Aurora product is very complex, our software solution is meant for basically all cross-border trade players who send goods to Europe to help them to be compliant, to pay the taxes correctly to every single European Union country. And it means that our team has both very strong technology, engineering, machine learning, data skills are needed, and lots of tax and customs experts needed globally from different regions. And basically the knowledge doesn't come from the startup sector, really. Logistic industry or custom industry has not been the first choice for startups so far, but thanks to the European Union regulations, it's the huge pain point to solve for the industry. And how to hire? Well, I have to be honest, the first 10 make the difference. So first 10 people brought in the next 25. Every fourth of our team members globally have been joining thanks to people who are working here or who have been recommended by our own people. So it's the huge importance who are the first 10, 20 members of your team. And the second is flexibility. In order to hire people globally so quickly, you cannot be very restrictive or very heavily regulated internally. You rather adjust yourself for people needs. And I would say that if we take the economic situation away, if we take the inflation away, then the biggest challenge is that people want to work for you, but not from the country where you are located. And actually, the country is also not the one they are the residents of tax residents of. So you constantly need to navigate between maybe 2-3 locations and find a way to onboard people. And it's not like one-time thing. People are constantly moving in technology and in the startup sector. So it's the startup world is new every day, 9 o'clock. New life, and this is what we need to survive. Well,
no, you're exactly right. And in the US, and we have obviously 50 states, and every state has a different set of labor laws, compensation, non-disclosure agreements, all the things that you can do, or even questions that you can ask people. You know, in California, for example, where I'm based and where Jennifer is based, you know, we're not allowed to ask applicants what their current compensation is. If they volunteer the information, we can use it, but we can't ask them. But that's only true in about 18 states. So you have to be very aware of the labor laws and what's happening in the other areas that you might be recruiting for, because it's not all the same, similar to what you're talking about in Estonia and different countries. Joachim, I'm curious, so on the other side of the spectrum, so whereas, you know, Estelle and Aurora are a startup company, you know, obviously Hübner has been around for a long time. Well-known, well-established industrial, you know, manufacturing company. How is it for you in terms of bringing talent in and attracting talent?
Yes, what we see is that it's more difficult to attract people in the last months during the pandemic situation. That's a point. That means we have to invest more energy to bring people to our company. Also, you need speed in the process. That means if you have not a decision after 3 or 4 weeks, then you will lose the best candidates in the pipeline. And what we also see is that as an employer, you have mandatory points in benefit and compensation. That means the people would like to have flexibility in work from home. That's for sure. Otherwise, the process is finished at the beginning. And this has changed in the last 3 years, definitely. And what we also see is that Hübner also looking for different skills in the market. That means regarding on the business segments, different competencies are necessary. So we cannot looking for 100% profile. We have to find talents with a good personality, with the right spirit for our company. And then it's better to go for a learning session, a learning course, and also a learning journey, and combine it with the compensation. This is a better way as to looking for 100% recruiting project. You will never find the right people, in my opinion. So it depends on the target group, definitely. But what we have to do is that we have to invest more for the internal development to bring the people to the right level. That's my personal opinion and the experience we had in the last months.
That's great. That's very good. Yeah, and that's actually a great segue into our next poll question also. I want to ask something and talk a little bit about succession planning and about, about development also. So I'm gonna launch this other question here in the poll. I'd like to get everybody's feedback on this. Let's start with performance reviews. So this question is going to ask you, how often do you talk to your employees about career pathing and performance? Okay, I know at least in the US, it used to be annual, where people would just do a once a year annual review. Nobody enjoyed it. The hiring managers, the leaders didn't like it because it was made you very busy, and the employees that were being reviewed didn't usually enjoy it either, because it wasn't usually very productive or effective for them. So we're seeing a lot of change in the US, where companies are doing either monthly or quarterly career conversations, as we call them, rather than waiting for a one-time annual review. So I'm curious about what's happening in the rest of the world here. We'll see what the results say. And maybe is Arpita back? I think so. Yes, Arpita, maybe you can start the conversation about this as well, in terms of since your company DKSH has such a large number of employees, how do you handle reviews and career conversations and career pathing with your team out there?
So it is actually very structured. So we have recently launched SuccessFactor, and before that we used to have our talent portal. So there is annual discussion, then there is the quarterly discussions, and also we also have the half yearly discussions going on. So basically our HR business partners, they sit with the business unit head and also the managers, media managers, and then have the discussion with the team. Over and above this performance review, we also have another very unique feature called talent panel discussion. So we basically highlight our talents, we have a way of identifying our talents. So that is, the mission critical roles are identified, and we see that who are the talents who can take over those roles that's a part of the succession planning as well. So this is very interrelated. So as a part of the succession planning, we identified the talents, and then over and above that, we have the performance management discussions and the performance reviews going on. So over a period of time, we have actually moved from different types of development internally. So initially there was talent panel, then there was performance review. Now we have introduced the MCR. So maybe when we are going to have the succession planning discussion, I can elaborate a little bit more on that. So overall, I think it's a discussion phase. We go by the ratings, we discuss with our employees and see that how, for the next quarter, how we can basically address to the concerns.
And I'm curious, so do you ask the employees to prepare their feedback, their comments before the review happens, so they have some time to ask questions, but also to talk about areas of development as well beforehand?
Yes. So when we are having the discussion, they already know that this discussion is going to happen. So they are coming prepared, and if they have any questions, they definitely, we can also face the questions along with the line manager. So it's a very, very transparent way of discussion, and then arriving to a conclusion on how we will take it forward.
Very good. Very good. Okay. And Estelle, a question for you also. I'm curious, you mentioned a few moments ago about how you've had a great success with hiring people that were referred by your current employees. Is that part of the review process? In other words, do people get a higher rating at Aurora if they referred somebody in who got hired? Is that part of that analysis?
Well, it's 1/3 of our people are still on a probation period, and the other third has been worked less than a year. So I would say that our most of our performance discussions or reviews are related to, have you learned what Aurora is about, what your job is about, so what your questions are related to that. So no structure or annual reviews, and I think we will not actually get to the annual at all. It's rather monthly or quarterly and quite tailored to the actual team needs. And but regarding referrals, we have referral bonuses, and quite good ones, and quite common in technology, IT, startup world, because the senior level software engineers or machine learning engineers, or it's quite scarce resource globally. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been recruiting for 25 years, and I'm still so surprised when I hear that companies don't have any kind of a referral program, right? Because that's, a lot of times you get your best people from folks that already work there because they know the culture, they know the right personality, they know the skill set that usually is required to work in the organization. And so having that kind of a referral program is, it's popular, but also it's very, very effective. So let me share the results here. And Tom, I'm curious about what you do at Asahi as well. But so here's, as far as the results go for this last poll. So again, so it looks like most people are still doing it once a year. 39% of people are still doing once a year reviews, followed by about 21% are quarterly. So about 1 in 5, and about the same twice a year. And the most infrequent is monthly. So only about 10% of companies are doing it monthly. And about 12% of people said that there isn't any formal time, which I assume probably means they do it more ad hoc and kind of a little bit more let's just talk and have a conversation, but not have a formal setting for when that's going to take place. So a nice variety. And that was 130 people that responded. So again, that's a pretty broad representation across the world of what different organizations are doing, for sure. Oh, great. Tom, what are you doing at Asahi in terms of how often you're doing reviews, and then again about whether you have an employee referral program?
Yeah, well, I think we do have a pretty structured, rigorous process when it comes to performance management, and formally we do annual performance review as many companies, as you can see from the poll. But at the same time, where I see the shift, because we recently we also reviewed the process itself, like when we are actually focusing, and I can see the shift in focus more on principles and people rather than the process, which I actually like, because that's what managers are willing to do more. Yeah. So we were there's a formal process. Actually, one bigger review mid-year is more like can we like a light touch? Yeah, but don't forget to talk to your people. But ultimately, we are trying to move more to a culture where managers basically talk to their people on a regular basis about their career, about performance, about goals, about opportunities, and so on. And we are supporting it through, managerial forums where we actually play a role more like a facilitator rather than driving it, which, again, I see as a positive shift in terms of what role HR plays. Because I think many people in the corporate world would say, yeah, well, that was called HR process, right? Performance management. Performance management is not an HR process; it's a business process, owned and facilitated, you can say, by HR. And I can see this positive shift. So I think, yeah, well, there's still that's the basics. We still have regular reviews, but I think the whole buzz about annual reviews being cancelled was just probably misunderstanding in my eyes. Because you still need to have that formal conversation, but it doesn't work if you don't talk to your team regularly, if you don't have all the individual sessions, if there is that human element as the glue, of the whole process. As for the referral program, yeah, I think you said that it's a must. Yeah. Yes, it's I see it. I was accountable for talent management for a couple of years. It was one of the things where I realized we don't have it. I said we should have it. and we put in place like years ago. And when I moved to another part of the company, I always make sure that there's something like this in place, because what you describe is perfectly right. People know the culture at the end of the company. They are happy to refer. They're happy to bring colleagues they know. Yeah, so definitely in place.
Great, perfect. All right, thank you, Tom. And it's interesting. It's one of those things that, regardless of what region of the country we're talking to or industry, that that is a really important aspect, a really important component of every talent acquisition and HR strategy, really, to make sure that you are approaching people internally to make good hires, but then you're also talking to them about the work they're doing and their performance. It's really important. Okay, let's move into the next poll question is about succession planning. And then after this, we'll start talking about work from home, which I know is on everybody's mind. But succession planning is pretty unique. So the question I have here for you says, for which levels have you created a formal succession plan? All right, and so I know it's different for each company and also for different parts around the world. But let's see what people say as far as succession planning goes. And then once we have this poll responses. Joachim, I'll be curious about your thoughts, how you're working with succession plans out there. Again, given the size and the scope of Hübner and what you do, I'm really interested to hear, how you handle that out there.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead and give us your thoughts, if you would.
Okay. Yes, of course. Yeah, we started, as I started in Hübner, I implemented first a succession planning 8 years ago, because there was nothing available. And I started a discussion to think about what are the key positions, what are the key persons. And so we come into a good dialogue between management and HR. And between the management, we have implemented this dialogue during the last years. So we have now a succession planning for key positions, where we think about what happens if we need a successor. So, and we have some development plans, and also we have, of course, succession plans where we always have to look to our talents, because this is one of the pipelines we have to use. So, and first we have done it from the top, and then of course we have bring it in each business area. Then we have implemented the discussion in the different regions. And after 8 years, I can say, okay, we are in a good level of discussion, but we have some room for improvements, definitely. So there are some regions in the world I'm not really satisfied, and we have to change.
Interesting. And I'm curious, do you have that succession planning set up? Is it based on level? So for all VPs or directors, or is it really up to the departmental heads or the regional leaders?
Yeah, both things. So we have key positions that not really linked to the management level. That also could be technical knowledge. And we have, of course, management functions in this discussion. So both points are important, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. And I think depending upon the size of the company and really kind of the average tenure of the employees as well, that's going to, and to some extent, that's going to dictate, where you set up those programs also. And Jennifer, how about yourself with the clients that you're consulting for and the HR strategizing that you're doing, and even back at Kia as well? What do you see out there?
I think this is a very interesting discussion, because many of us who have been in HR for a long time may have thought about, even started some succession planning, may have done it even on Excel spreadsheets and things like this. But the pandemic and sort of just what changed as a result of the pandemic really catapulted us into a huge necessity to to formalize succession planning. And I think whether it's for Kia, we went through a lot of the same things and are still going through that, as other panelists have talked about, or other organizations. Obviously starting with a very, very strong platform that suits the organization and the people in the organization, so that you don't have to work on those spreadsheets anymore. But that's so key, because that's going to help then with communication and training, how we're communicating about it and how we're training top down and throughout the organization has changed drastically over the past 3 years. And that's really essential to be able to do it. And I agree with the other panelists that, not only does it have to come from the top and start at the top, and people at the top being willing to participate in the discussion, to participate in what it means to do succession planning, even for their own role. But then throughout the organization with employees and managers really understanding what it means to have a career coaching conversation with their employees and understand what their goals are over time. The system that Kia had implemented also with success factors, and being able to identify somebody very young in their career and sort of how they see themselves, their trajectory within the organization or in their career in general is so key. And so I think, and then I think, again, with somebody like me who hadn't planned on leaving the organization and then did, you're forced to have those conversations and go through that process very quickly for certain positions, which then I think really demonstrates the need to have to do this across the board. But I really do think it starts with that sort of foundation and those basic platforms of the system, the training and the communication, in order to be able to successfully go through that process. And I'm seeing that throughout any organization. I've been in touch with a lot of different organizations, and with Kia, it's the same. And it sounds like it's the same globally. We're all going through that.
Exactly. No, it's great. And I know, from a candidate perspective, with all the recruiting that we do for our clients in the US, quite often, especially at the mid and upper levels, the candidates will ask us, where can I go from here? If I kind of express interest in a certain position and I want to go through the process, where can my career go from here within this company if I join them? So that's become a really big part of the discovery that we do as search consultants with our clients, and asking them, okay, you're looking to hire a VP of finance. Could this eventually evolve into CFO? Or you're trying to hire a head of operations. Could this go, beyond that? Because candidates are really asking about that quite a bit. So there has to be that preparation beforehand to know how to address that question that comes up also. All right, I'm going to read the results here of this poll. Then Arpita, I want to get your thoughts also on what you do for succession planning. So in terms of this, so we had 109 people that responded to this poll. Again, asking about, the succession planning levels. So it looks like the majority of people, actually, surprisingly, about 55% don't have any formal succession plan at any level. So there's certainly some work to be done there. And that may be, a reflection of smaller companies, certainly. My company is 7 people. And so it's a little bit harder to do that with 7 people versus, 7,000. But so that's about 55%. Then about 29% of you said that for managers and above, that's where you start your succession planning programs. And that's where those conversations are happening as well. And then for directors, so about 8% of companies do succession planning for directors and above. About 6% do it for VP level only and above. And then about 1%, so about 2 people or so, 1 person out of the 109, does planning only for the C-suite. So only at the very, very top level. So I think from what you've heard, obviously, it's important to implement across the board, if at all possible, and at least to start having the conversations. Whether you have a formal board of corporate board or a board of advisors, or even just the senior executive C-suite team getting together, it's really important to make sure you're talking about, the unfortunate what if scenarios. Right? If one person has all the information and that person unfortunately gets hurt or injured, or they leave the company, then what's going to happen? The company has to be prepared for that. So succession planning is really important from that perspective. Arpita, so what's happening for you in your world in terms of succession planning?
So I would have 2 parts of the answer. So almost 5 to 6 years back, we introduced something called, I started it in Myanmar first, key talent flight risk. So for us, the succession planning was not limited to only the C-suite candidates, the C-suite employees or the VP levels. So it was the key talent, which many of my colleagues also here mentioned that. So we tried to address that who are the key talents, what are the challenges, who are happy in the role, who are not happy in the role, what are they expecting, and how we can address the problem. So we were, continuously updating that. eventually in the last 1 or 2 years, we have also introduced a new way of looking at succession planning. That is the introducing the mission critical roles. So it's same thing on a different way of looking at the situation. So the mission critical roles are once again the roles which we cannot do without. So that can be once again a VP and above role, and it can be also a manager or senior manager. It depends upon the the complexity of the role, the financial impact, the skill and the know-how of the role, and in the risk of vacancy. So that's the way we are basically addressing the mission critical role. And then we are identifying internally who are ready now, who are ready after 1 year, or who can be ready after 2 to 3 years. And looking at that, then we decide that whether we have to hire somebody now or we have to basically groom someone from within. So we are taking succession planning in a very, very serious manner, and we are working on it at all levels, mostly manager and senior manager above, and also the typical key positions, which are, like I have mentioned, that we cannot do away without.
That's great. That's great. I love that. Yeah. And it sounds like you've done a good job also as an organization, really identifying, kind of analyzing and identifying those roles that are high impact, that are critical positions that you've got to have a plan in place for. Definitely. So Tracy had asked the question here from the group. Does anybody use any particular technology or software program or platform that allows you to track your succession planning programs?
So we are doing, like we have introduced SuccessFactors this year. So we are putting all these MCR and these materials into SuccessFactors as well. So in a way, we are tracking, we are updating it in the system, and we are tracking. So there are point systems, like if there is 2 successors who are ready now, then there is a certain point. So there is a mechanism which we follow over there also.
Okay. Anybody else have a program or any kind of software that they use? Yeah, Estelle. Yeah.
We also have I just wanted to share. We also have SuccessFactors. Keep rolling it out. That's we use as a core you can say application system for basically people management processes all across.
Similar to Kia, as I mentioned, same thing. And their succession planning platform does allow you to start at the very beginning with an employee's career path and sort of identify which critical positions in the organization they would be able to be ready for in time. And it gives you 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, things like that. So it sounds like several of us are SuccessFactors fans, not that it was intended
exactly
to be a commercial for them.
They should be our sponsor for the,
That's
for the
right.
webinar. Exactly. All right, good. Estelle, you had your hand up too. Do you have a different system that you use other than SuccessFactors?
Yeah, I think a little bit. So maybe the first thing is that I stopped using succession as a term quite long time ago, maybe even 10 years ago, and replaced it with substitution. And why substitution makes it more a leadership topic, more closer to the team leads, that, okay, if someone is sick or someone is at holiday, someone is leaving the company, so who would substitute? And the point gets across more easily. And the tools I have been using before, not in Aurora at the moment, but before in a bit bigger companies, has been the software that is used for budgeting, annual budgeting. Mm-hmm. So we basically incorporated the succession part to the budgeting process. And the main logic there was that, well, this is actually something leaders usually look at and take seriously. Succession tools may be overlooked easily, but budgets never.
Right.
And this is like from this organizational sustainability point of view, and also well-being of employees, meaning that you can actually be sick at home or be on holiday if there is someone who is willing to substitute you. And in small organizations, Estonia is a small country, so our companies are small as well. We are cross-functional. We have to be. You cannot be just recruitment in HR. You need to do full cycle of the HR works in order to manage the company, because we do not have thousands of people. It's hundreds of people maximum. And one other thing is the sustainability from employee perspective. Then I've been using not the tool, but career counseling consciously, meaning that leaders are not really often interested to discuss the topics outside of their scope, outside of the respective field or unit. But people are not limited to their existing team, existing company. So it's basically offering the career counseling that is independent, is professional, and it has allowed me to, I'd say, know maybe half a year, maybe 2 years in advance if people are interested in leaving the company because there is just no career path for them inside current company, but they have left and they have came back because of this career counseling process within a few years. So it's yeah.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Budgeting software and career counseling are the tools.
Right. No, I agree. And I think, you know, no matter what technology you might use, kind of what you're talking about, it's not so much about the technology or the software. It's about the conversation, right? It's the communication has to happen, whether you're using Excel spreadsheets or a Word document or success factors. You know, it's less important about how you're tracking it and more important that you are tracking it and that you are having those conversations. That's what people are looking for, especially the younger generation, right? Even the younger millennials and Gen Z as well. I've got 2 kids that are Gen Zs, and you know they're always talking about what's going to be next, right? What is my career path going to be? Where can it lead me to? And they're not afraid to ask those questions, and they're not afraid to ask the questions of very high level executives. And so we all as leaders have to be ready for that and be understanding of that and have an answer ready to go when that question does come up, for sure. Definitely. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit over into work structure. I know this has been not just in the US, but across the globe. You know, companies are still trying to figure out what the right structure is, right? Do they let employees work from home whenever they want? Do they require that everybody comes into the office? If you're Elon Musk, right, you're making those demands, which hasn't really been well received, and he's had to kind of walk back some of those comments. But you've got a lot of people in the middle that are just uncertain. So I'm going to ask this question first. I'm going to give you some insight about what I'm seeing with my clients, and then I want to get all the panelists' perspective as well. So the question here is around work structure. What is your current work employment structure? In other words, are you working from home? Are you remote, or what have you? So I'm really curious to see what everybody says they are doing out there right now, because it's a very fluid environment in the US especially. And maybe Tom, do you want to start and talk about what's happening at Asahi? I mean, given that you've got people in operations throughout the Asia Pacific region, what are you seeing? How are you handling your work structure right now?
Yeah, thank you, Ken. And I think one thing to start with is it's very different. Yeah, I mean, region by region, sometimes country by country, because we really didn't think strategically there's one solution that would fit all. We tried to align on principles, specifically in Europe. So we said, okay, let's have like common principles in terms of the hybrid work, and we are in a hybrid mode. And one of the reasons is like for our obviously production or manufacturing, you can't imagine people actually working like in a brewery from home. Yeah, it's impossible. There's a brewing line, there's a packaging line, so on and so on. In terms of the office work, we wanted to offer flexibility, but it was a broader conversation, not just in terms of, okay, well, there's COVID and people actually can't work from the office, but it actually triggered a much broader conversation about a culture and about what are the needs, what is the expectation of employees, potentially expectation of candidates, and so on and so on. So I think you'll be right to say like we are still figuring it out. At the same time, like we do have a set of principles in place that may slightly differ country by country. It's a hybrid setup. Here, actually, for the headquarters, we'll have 50-50 with the flexibility in terms of like its own balance. Let's not fixed days and so on. And we are tracking, like what's the trend, how does it work, and keep adjusting. So that's yeah, roughly the setup that we have.
That's great. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I think is making this a more difficult conversation is that the media, in my opinion, is really not doing a very good job describing or defining what work from home means. When you read articles about it or surveys, it's usually all or nothing. Work from home means 100% from home, and in the office means 100% in the office. When the reality is, and actually the poll shows this, that the majority of companies have a hybrid. And so I wish, the media outlets across, at least in the US anyway, would do a better job of really explaining what that actually means. Estelle, what are you doing in Estonia as far as remote working, and how is that structured for you?
Well, in Aurora, it's working from anywhere. So 24/7 accessibility from anywhere. And so it's really up to the teams to decide. So we have some people working fully remotely, some people joining half and half time, some people preferring office. And quite often the decision is made not just related to the business needs, but also the team setup. Like, do you have family people who have kids to take from the school, or do you have mostly young people who are very into, starting late in the morning, but working really late until the nighttime? So yeah, working from anywhere and very flexible is what we do.
That's me. I'm a night person. I'm much more effective at 9 p.m. at night than I am at 6 a.m. in the morning. So everybody's different. And I think in my experience in talking to a lot of companies and our clients out there, I think a lot of CEOs are just concerned that if only certain jobs, certain functions in their company are allowed to work from home, then the people that have to be in the office are gonna resent that and be upset about that. But again, I think it comes back to communication. Right? If you are talking to your team, even those folks that are in the warehouse or that are on the front lines or that are in the lab, if you're in a bioscience company, if you talk to them and say, I realize that you have to be in the office to do your job, but there's other ways that you can accommodate that. You can give them a half day on a Friday, let them come in late on a Monday. Those are things that they understand. They realize they're smart people. Obviously, they realize their job has to be in the office. So I think CEOs need to just have that conversation, and even business unit leaders, to allow for different setups, among different functions. Okay, so as far as the poll goes, so we had 122 people that responded. So that was great. A really good number of folks here. Let me share the results. So of the 122, 43%, right? So almost half, 43% said that they have a hybrid structure with 2 to 3 days a week in the office. Okay, that's about 43%, followed by 25%. So a quarter of people right now are 100% remote, right? So about a quarter of folks. And then we have about 14% are hybrid with 1 day a week in the office. That's 14%. And then 11%, 4 days in the office. So means just 1 day remotely. And about 7% of people are 100% in the office all the time. So again, back to my point a few minutes ago about the media, the majority of companies have a hybrid. Most companies are not all in the office and are not all at home. There's a mixture and a flexibility. And from what we see with our candidates at all levels, that's what candidates want. They just want the ability to have some flexibility, right? They want that autonomy. They want the independence to work from home on a Friday or a Monday. And they understand there's certain needs of the business, but again, it's all about that communication that's really important. Joachim, what are you seeing? What do you do at Hubner? I know you have people everywhere also. How are you handling the work from home structure?
It's similar as we have seen in the statistic. Hybrid model is the best. What I have done in my HR area, for example, we have 20 employees and I have only 15 workplaces. So the people have to talk to each other, how they organize themselves in the teams for being here or being at home. And that helps us to have a good communication. And of course, you also save money for room, for office space. Mm-hmm. And also what you have also to do is that you have time where everybody is in present here for team communication, but not every day. So this is a point, I think, in the future office area, you need a mix of communication, collaboration, and at home, you can do your work where you have to be alone without any colleague, maybe. So this is something we try to push more in Hübner Group.
Great. And Tom, how about yourself? Are you seeing any changes also coming up? Or do you think it's going to stay hybrid the way it is right now?
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. That's
I think
okay.
it's hard to tell. Many things when you ask about what does make sense. What does make sense strategically? I think it comes back to what is the culture that you want to drive as a company.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't tell, obviously, the general trend. I think it's going to stay, one way or the other. But more or less, I think the hybrid is not going to go away, because what we learned during COVID is like many people started in a hybrid or remote work, and then they came to the office because they couldn't actually relocate, for example. And managers and us, we became more and more open to have this kind of like interim hybrid setup and so on. So the flexibility, I think, is not going to go away. The exact shape and form may change, also may change for us. But I think it really comes from, okay, what is the company culture that you want to drive? And is it important for people to meet in person? Because like for our business, where, like we have as our purpose is like creating meaningful connections. Like it's hard to imagine you create them only in a virtual world. Yeah, we still believe people should meet face to face. They should have beer together and so on. So again, like you can have beer like virtually, but it's not the same experience. So all these things they are important. So yeah,
I agree.
General,
I agree.
Yeah, not going to go away.
Yeah. And that's a big question that we're hearing also from the candidates, and also that we're asking our clients. This is your work structure today. Are there plans to change it next year, right? Because applicants and candidates don't want to be surprised if all of a sudden 6 months from now they're expected to be in the office 5 days a week, and they didn't. That's not what they signed up for, right? And so that can be a challenge also. A couple of questions came up from the audience also around technology and platforms. Specifically around working from home. I have spoken to some clients that have used apps because they have to manage their workspace, right? Because they've downsized in a lot of cases, so they don't have the same amount of space. So not every employee has a dedicated desk. There's a lot more desk sharing and space sharing, so they have apps to manage that. But I'm curious, any of you, and Jennifer, I'm not sure what you've seen out there as well, maybe you can start, but any technology or platform that you've used to help manage that workspace and the work from home?
Yeah. So for me personally, I mean, obviously I've heard of a lot of organizations and using apps and platforms. I know at Kia, they had started to look at potential apps around just having a more open space when you're in the office so that people can change around. Obviously, earlier in the pandemic, that was a scary subject because of safety reasons, and people were a little bit nervous about sharing desks and things like this because of the pandemic. That has, I think, subsided quite a bit. And now it's really about just making sure people, whether they're in the office or they're working from home, have the appropriate technology to be able to do their job and be supported. And obviously that can be challenging when you have a lot of people working from home. So I apologize, I don't have as much. I haven't used myself a job, sort of a desk sharing app, but I know it's something that a lot of organizations are considering. So perhaps another panelist might have a little more insights on that one.
Yeah, I'm curious, Arpita, what are you doing in terms of technology, and not only technology in terms of the desk sharing piece, which is a big part of it, but also in terms of communication? I think all of us are leaders in our organizations, but we were raised right in a corporate environment where we saw our employees on a regular basis, and so we use what I call line of sight management. You manage people based on the fact that you can see them. And so that has changed completely. And a lot of leaders are having a hard time adjusting and creating the right culture on their team, right? Creating that cohesion, but also just communicating in general. It's hard to make that adjustment. So maybe you can address that a little bit, Arpita, what you're seeing out there around that.
So officially, after the pandemic, we have just introduced 2 days work from home 2 months back. So that is officially we have started in Myanmar. In other countries, in cases, they have already started 2 to 3 days. And I know about some of the countries where they are managing the similar desk sharing things. But in Myanmar specifically, like when it comes for the warehouses, there is no question of work from home over there because the people need to be present. And also, like we have a country management team. So we don't send out a communication just like that to everybody that this is what we have introduced and this is what is going to be like. So we discuss in the country management team and we ask that each BU heads, the business unit heads, and also the functional heads to tell their team accordingly who can actually do the work from home. And there are sometimes some people who will need to be in the office. So it will be on their discretion. And we have also observed this, that some of the employees, they don't wish to work from home. So this is very unique of Myanmar, because Myanmar is having a lot of problem in terms of internet stability and electricity problems because of the military coup, which has taken place 1.5 years back. So it's very unique over here. So people are more comfortable working from office rather than at home because they will not be connected. So, overall, there's a mixed response to it in Myanmar.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something that we obviously take for granted, at least in the US here, is that you have the ability, right, to even work from home because we have good internet. It's very reliable. It's very consistent. Electricity is a whole nother conversation, right? But yeah, you're very correct in saying that it depends upon where you are in the world, and you might be a company headquartered in a very internet savvy region, but you have employees in other parts of the world that are not quite as savvy. So it's difficult to make that balance also. Estelle, how about yourself in Estonia? What do you see? How does that work there?
Oh, it's when you're a small company, then you're going to be really flexible. And for us, the flexibility also means that everybody who wants can have their own dedicated desk in the office, plus additional desk for people who come randomly in from other offices. So it's quite, up to the people's choice at the moment. And like if I look forward next 6 months, 12 months, I see that this will stay as it is. And it's rather the nature of our global business. When people need to work late hours or early morning hours, we don't want them to drive to the office to make a call to China at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's okay to do it from home. So from our side, I think it will remain as it is.
Yeah. And has anybody implemented either a new or an enhanced program in terms of communication, ongoing discussions with your employees to make sure that they are in the loop, right? That you're talking to them, that leaders are giving them feedback and constructive, criticism about their job, but also just about, keeping them engaged. It's much easier to keep your employees engaged if they are down the hall and you can go see them and have a face-to-face conversation and you can read their body language and see how their eye contact is. It's tough to do when you're remote. It's hard to know for sure if people are really engaged. Anybody have any programs or systems that have helped with that?
I mean, I think it's, you can sort of go back to the basics a little bit with something like this, with making sure you have a robust intranet that you can use as a communication tool. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Ken, when you said that that's the most critical thing is communication. And that hasn't changed. That was what it was in March of 2000. And that's what it is now as well. And I think HR managers throughout the organization, but HR in particular does have sort of an added responsibility to be current in what they're communicating with their team members. We saw that at Kia too. Like if we weren't communicating at least like once a week or more than that officially to all team members, then people were wondering what's going on, what's happening, why aren't we hearing from you, And so I think some of those communications are often just very basic reminders. Hey, have you called your team members who are working from home today to find out how are they, what's going on in their lives personally and professionally. And so having the right tools and intranet, some kind of communication platform, Kia had implemented several of those throughout the time I was there, but also particularly in the last 3 years, and making sure that you give those little simple reminders to managers to check in with when they don't have a line of sight on a day-to-day basis, to check in with their team members. I think the isolation issue is a really big issue with working from home, even if you have a hybrid workforce and you are able to work from home even a few days a week, that feeling of isolation can creep up on you pretty quick. And if managers and team members aren't checking in with each other, then it's, it can be a big issue for the organization.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Yeah, it is tough. It takes more time out of your schedule to manage that and to be aware of it, because leaders are still having to do their regular non-management job, right? The tactical aspects of their job, but they also have to stay cognizant of what's happening. When's the last time I talked to Sally? When's the last time I talked to Mark? Right? You got to make sure that you're staying connected. Tom, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, just a quick comment, because I think I 100% agree with Jennifer in terms of tools, like, and importance for people to understand it's different. I think one of the things we did was like we really focused on training the managers in terms of hybrid work. Yeah, so that they actually understand it's different and they can have like informal catch-ups. But one of the trends that I can see now and we are exploring is like to actually start to track more what is your digital culture in the company. So to understand, because you got a huge like amount of digital data in terms of collaboration. And do we actually understand like how people behave in that space? And do we understand how is this linked to the performance? How does this link to the engagement, whatever you call it, like happiness at work and so on? And this is something that we started to explore more, and I believe like will be needed. Because it's the same, like collaboration, you got the same company, but working in a slightly different space that's digital, which offers you like different views. So yeah, that's something on top of this.
I agree completely. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so with the remaining time we have, I want to touch on another topic. I want to make sure we give enough time for this. And this is around the focus around diversity, right? It's very big in the US. It has been this way for a couple of years. It was a long time coming. I wish we had had this conversation, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it's taking a long time to really come to the forefront. But it really has stuck with a lot of organizations. We are hearing more and more from both clients and from candidates questions about diversity. What is the makeup of the board? What is the makeup of the leadership team? What's the mix? And diversity can mean different things. It's not just ethnicity, right, or religion, but also age, gender, obviously. I call it diversity of thought, right? If everybody in your company is from the same industry that looks the same, as the same gender, there's not a lot of diversity of thought, not a lot of true innovation going on. You have to have a broad-based, more diverse team to be as effective as possible. I'm very fortunate on my team. I have a small team of 7. I have 6 women that work with me, and I'm the only man, right? But everybody's a different age, different backgrounds, and we have different ideas and different innovative, strategies to bring to the table. And I think that's what makes us a great organization, is because we're all open to that diverse conversation. And I know there are times where diversity discussions can be a little bit sensitive and difficult, but we've got to start having that conversation out there to make a difference. So I'm going to open this up to the whole group, and anybody can start who wants to, but I'm curious about what you are doing in your organization, maybe things that are different or things that you have, on the schedule to be doing starting in 2023 around diversity hiring, as well as inclusion for those folks that are already on board as well. Who would like to start with that?
I'm happy to start, from a US perspective. Sure, no problem. As you said, Ken, as much as the level at which we're focused on this should have been something that was happening a long time ago. And a lot of organizations perhaps had it a little bit more in the background as something that they were thinking about or doing small things. But then, mid 2000, every organization in the US, no matter the size, was again sort of catapulted along with the pandemic stuff, into this world of really having to take a step back, be humble, and realize that there's a lot that we probably don't know. There's a lot that our team members are thinking about, And then, of course, along with that was the whole political arena as well. So everything that was going on around social activism, politics, the pandemic, it was sort of this perfect storm of a lot of heaviness, that team members and people throughout the country were feeling. And I know at Kia, and I heard this, I was connected with a lot of HR people during this time. The first thing you had to do was realize how far you were in the spectrum of really understanding and demonstrating as an organization what you were doing in this space. You couldn't, when Black Lives Matter came out, you couldn't just go out there and put a black square on your website saying Black Lives Matter if you weren't really, as an organization, able to defend and demonstrate how you supported that. And so I think the first step that was important, and Kia did this as well, was taking a step back and listening. So creating forums, perhaps facilitated, with experts out there, where people could just come and listen and talk, not be judged, not have, their manager listening and saying, oh, I'm going to put this on their performance review, and just really understanding what was on people's minds and what were they thinking, no matter what it was. And as a leader, as an executive, being willing to just listen and not respond with some kind of answer, or here's what we're doing and here's how we're going to fix this and stuff. And that work is now forever. It doesn't just stop, a few years later because it's not perhaps as much in the media or whatnot, So it was really exciting as somebody new in leading diversity and inclusion for an organization to be able to sit back and learn a lot about this, and then be able to offer up these kinds of tools. And then, of course, as you continue programmatically as an organization, being able to support other organizations out there, time, resources, money, those kinds of things, obviously is very important. On the recruiting front, there's lots of tools out there where you can, sort of push out the positions you're looking for to cast a wider net of applicants throughout the state, the country, the world, really, to be able to open up to more diversity, recruiting, promotion, those kinds of things as well. Of course, there's so many tools out there that can be used in that space.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. I agree. I think a big part of it is being willing to have the conversation and talk about it and acknowledge the good and the bad as to what's happening in your company right now, and figure out how do we get to a better place ultimately. Joachim or Estelle, I'm sorry, go ahead, Estelle. Yeah.
Well, if to share our experience, then we just this summer we had the cross-company discussions about what our core values are, to discuss and agree and establish them and really start advocating them. And one of them is diversely capable. So it came from our teams that we have to be diversely capable to do what we promised to do for our customers and also to succeed as a team. And well, we have lots of positive examples, starting from with our chairman of the management board is a lady, not very common for technology and startup industry. And maybe one more example that we have a team, if they go, after work to have a beer, to share a beer together, there is 3 men. One of them is American, one of them is Russian, and you can guess probably that the third one is Ukrainian. And they are one of the best performing teams in our organization. So the meaning of diversity comes into so many levels, and we just need to address it the best way possible. And so
That's great. That's great.
Very much support.
Yeah, and actually a question from Alberto in the audience as well about age discrimination, which I know is, honestly, it's been a topic in the US for a long time, as long as I can remember. It's harder for older applicants that are in their 60s, let's say late 50s and 60s. They tend to not be as well received as those candidates that are in their 30s and 40s that are perceived to have a longer career track ahead of them, right? Are there anything that you're doing and this is for everybody, that anybody is doing to try to help bring in a wider age group to your organization and hopefully be able to eliminate any kind of unconscious age discrimination? Yeah, Estelle.
Or maybe I can bring an example, not even company level, but at the national level, country level. It's not very common that the Prime Minister invites HRs over to have official discussions about what to do for the country future. So this year I've been lucky to be invited together with business organizations to share the plans, how to manage. And one of the key here is that the working age population is decreasing very heavily, and it's actually the case for many countries in developed countries. So how to survive, one of the key is to just rethink how we think about age. And 40 plus it's not anymore 40 plus, it has to be 50 plus, 60 plus. We just need to think about people staying healthy and working. And this is the only way to go for many European countries.
Very much so, yeah. Joachim, what about in Germany where you are? Yes.
Yeah, I would like to add the statement from Estelle. What I think and what we think more about is to change the role maybe in the age. That means we change more as an expert, as a senior expert, to be a coach or a mentor for our talents. And I believe this would be also one of the success stories. Keep the people in the company longer and use their knowledge in an effective way. And this is a point we're just discussing, and we have some first examples as lighthouses in the company to show, look, go the career as an expert and change your role. And then you're also a successful part of the company. And this is, in my opinion, also a good option regarding age.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that goes back to our discussion earlier on succession planning. Succession planning doesn't always have to mean moving up, right? It can also be moving across, especially if it's somebody whose life situation changes, or if they get older, or they want to, work 4 days a week instead of 5, whatever it might be. That succession planning conversation, again, can move in all different directions. Definitely. That's a really good point. Arpita, how about yourself on the diversity side?
Yeah, the beauty of DKSH Myanmar is that, it's an excellent diverse organization. So not now, even since the time I have joined, we have a huge mix of population over here. So many of our senior level roles and the mid-management levels are taken, there are mostly expats working in those areas. And it's very much like what Estelle mentioned. So we have French, Indian, Spanish, Australian, American, Polish, you name them, and we have them over here. So it's an amazing mix of culture. It's an amazing mix of overall exposure for our people. Plus, when we look at the male is to female ratio, we are already having more than 50% female in the company out here. And age, once again, I'm coming back to age. So we have not really concentrated on age, but overall, we have populations who are working in our company for 20 to 25 years as well. So they have all stayed back there. Like for our head of finance is working here for the last 25 years. So I think overall, I will refer DKSH Myanmar as a very, very diverse organization, and we have kept on continuing the culture over here.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and congrats on the mixture, both as far as gender, but also nationalities too. I think a lot of companies can take a good lesson.
That's really excellent. I mean, you actually get to know what people of different countries eat, how they talk. You pick up on the accents, and it's really excellent. I mean,
yes,
that's a huge exposure after coming to DKSH.
Right, exactly. And I think, back to the discussion earlier that we had about recruiting people, especially if you are recruiting folks in the Gen Z or young millennials, diversity is important to everybody, but it's really important to that population. I don't think I've ever seen the conversation happening as often as I do with the younger population. Again, my kids being an example, but just folks that we're interviewing as well for clients of ours that, they want to know how diverse is the organization. If they are a diversity candidate, once they join the company, are they going to be the only person that looks different, that sounds different than the rest of the team? And what's going to happen to make them feel included? That's the I part of DEI, right? It's not just hiring diverse, it's also including diversity once they get there too. So it's a great discussion. And I know we could spend another hour talking about diversity if we had the time. It's all about the conversation, bringing it up and making sure that people are aware of it. That's where it all starts for sure. Okay, great. So we're basically out of time here. I want to just end. First of all, I want to thank everybody. I mean, I know it's very, very late in the evening for some of you. It's been a very busy, very long day as well. So thank you all for being here. I want to thank all the folks at Talentor, Michael, and the rest of the partners that worked with me and that I supported, and they supported me in getting this together. So thank you all for that. So the last question I have for the whole group is, what do you think the most important role of HR is going to be in 2023? Moving into next year, what do you want to have happen? Where do you see your biggest impact on the organization going into next year? Estelle, do you want to start?
Well, facilitating the change and the growth. It's been going on for 2 years and it will continue. So change and growth.
Great, great. Tom, how about you? Where do you see the biggest role for HR next year?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that what HR sees, and there's another thing what is expected here. So I think like a lot of managers expect, like, okay, well, recruitment is always number one, because like without people we can't continue, and so on and so on. So I think apart from keeping the lights on, which can be challenging considering all the like changes globally, being very close to more strategic work, close to transformation, because there are many things actually changing in like across companies that like in terms of building skills. Yeah, it's one of the big topics, because like what we will need like tomorrow is not the same as today. And yeah, and I think like trying to, and that's for where I see HR, like to apply specific expertise in terms of understanding in depth the organization, including cultural aspects, to be able to be the advisor, sometimes even the leader or driver of certain changes in a specific way. That's
great. No, thank you. I think that's a really good way to summarize it. Definitely. Jennifer, how about yourself? Where do you see as the role of HR going into next year?
Yeah, Tom, I totally agree with what you just said. I was going to say a trusted advisor to not just leaders within the organization, but to every team member. And like you said, Ken, before, the younger generations are coming in and have an expectation that HR can serve as a coach and a mentor and a trusted advisor, somebody who can give tough love. All of those things are so critical. Keeping the lights on is an assumption. I agree, Tom, it's so critical, especially right now, but it's an assumption that's made that is perfect all the time. And so as an HR leader, you have to ensure you have the right team and platforms and processes to be able to support keeping the lights on as a given. And then I think the change management is so critical, not only because of the pandemic and the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, but branding. Companies like Kia and other organizations are, going through big brand changes. They're changing the way they work. The environment is changing. Perhaps the industry is changing, and HR must be a strong strategic advisor and must be talented. I think, I have a personal vested interest in HR people understanding finance and accounting, because that was my background. But I think it's also really important. I think a lot of the leaders of organizations, especially those that are for profit, expect the HR people not to just be the people who are having those tough conversations, but actually understand what's going on in the business and can speak to it and help drive the results of the business as well. So it's just a little job, but I think it's just a critical area. And I'm seeing, like, I have 2 young children as well who are in college and the end of high school, and people are starting to notice HR people more. They're really interested in this area a lot more than they used to be. I see a lot of young people going to college who are really excited about the potential of getting into HR. So I think it's an incredible area to be a part of.
No, that's great. I love that. Yeah, very good. Joachim, how about yourself in terms of next year and how you see your role evolving?
I believe we have to manage all the change and transformation process successfully. That will be a key for HR in the next 2 years.
I agree. Yeah. And being, like everybody has said, being that thought partner and having that strategic mindset to make a bigger impact on the organization. Definitely. All right. And last but not least, Arpita, how about your thoughts on that?
So I'm quite aligned with Jennifer here as well. So it's managing expectations, transformation management, And also, we just, HR is just not HR. Business wants them to talk the business language. They want them to understand the numbers. So we have to speak the business language. We have to speak numbers. So it's more of a strategic business partnering and also co-piloting. So that's what is expected out of HR. I think that is where we are driving the change.
That's great. No, thank you. I appreciate it. I think everybody is very much in alignment, and now we just need all the CEOs to understand how important and how strategic HR can be, right? That's the next goal we all have. So thank you all for being here. It's been a wonderful conversation. I know our panelists will make themselves available. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to anybody through LinkedIn. If you have any questions about what's happening in your particular region of the world around compensation levels or recruiting or retention, reach out to myself and my colleagues at Talentor. We're more than happy to help out. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate you being here and for your great questions as well. And I wish you all a great holiday season and a wonderful 2023. So thank you all.
Take
Take
care,
care.
everybody.
Thank you.